Welcome to the Executive Mirror. I'm Relly Nadler, Kevin Crawford, my associate here. Kevin, we want to talk today about change. And so from my sense in working with leaders and executives, over a couple hundred companies, everything is change. And so from the leader, how do you navigate change? And what do you do to make sure the change initiative, a lot of times it's around IT. It could be new team members. There can be acquisitions. One of the metaphors I like is, you ever play 52 card pickup when you were a young kid? And you take all the cards. And that's kind of our environment, is 52 card pickup.
Yeah, exactly. Every day.
Yeah, right.
I think for me, if I was to talk about the most valuable thing that you could do to manage change, it's orienting yourself to the fact that change is coming and that change is okay and that change is a part of growth and advancement.
Yeah.
What I have seen in many cases is executives are resistant to change just for the sake that change is a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if it's uncomfortable, the idea already has a couple strikes against it.
Yeah.
We've always done it this way. I've built my own sense of, value and security around this particular way of doing it. Maybe we've had some results. There's a little bit of risk involved in changing to something else. And so I think, to answer your question, the most succinctly, I think it's starting at the beginning to recognize that change is going to come. It's much like when we talked in past episodes about significant disruption or even a crisis. Executives, it's just going to come.
Right.
So the sooner that you can kind of orient your thinking to the fact that it's going to come, then you can prepare yourself a little bit better for when it does come. But obviously, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, change is a topic that I would talk about with leaders and their team, often in the training I do for coaches. It's also a big topic. So just the idea of change, and you said it, often change means more work. Often change is uncomfortable. Often change means maybe I'm not as good with this new change as possible. And so this idea we've talked about that I use from Alcoholics Anonymous, you have to name it to tame it. And so what I like about this, and I think you said it in other words, when change happens, it doesn't feel good, but you go from the old order to what the new order is. But what's in the middle is disorder. And so it's a preparatory step. So if we can talk about that already, there's going to be disorder. It feels chaotic. It feels uncomfortable. And if we don't catch it because it's uncomfortable, it doesn't feel good, the brain says, this must be wrong. This can't be right because look at how I feel. Look what's going on with the organization. And so then you get, and I usually change the words. I mean, a lot of times it's resistance. It's really reservation. People have reservations because they don't know how the change is going to impact them. They don't know how the change is going to impact their role, their organization. And so for the leaders, or it's really this executive team, how can they get their hands on it and kind of give the why? Why are we changing? What's the benefit of changing? Who's going to lead our change? How are we going to measure our change? And it's all the things that people need to say, because they're resistant or have reservations. Okay, maybe I will step into this. What kind of training are you going to give me with this? So we almost have to kind of lead them through that disorder.
Right. But what I'm hearing is that you're kind of preparing them for that middle phase.
Yes.
This is what you're going to feel. It's going to feel unusual. That's okay. It doesn't mean that the idea is not good.
Right.
I like that.
We're kind of helping them prevent this automatic thinking. And you've heard me talk about, if you stay on autopilot, you stay average. If they know ahead of time, Kevin or Relly told us we were going to go through that. Okay, versus that sense of, this doesn't feel good. This is wrong. And so how do we take that off the table?
And I've seen with a lot of changes in organizations that sometimes the resistance to change does have some merit.
Yeah.
You know, we've been down this path before,
Right.
and it hasn't worked. Now, maybe their understanding as to why it didn't work is relevant or irrelevant, but there's usually a little bit of substance there. And if we give that reservation, that hesitation, a little bit of attention, well, help me understand what your reservations are about this. The more they're heard and believe that they had an opportunity to weigh in, whether they go down with change, continue down this pathway with change or not, at least they've had an opportunity to express their perspectives, their feelings.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I think often the change comes from the top, but you really need to get everybody's fingerprints on it. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. What do you think you need, or what's important for you to move forward? Just as we've talked before, that honoring my opinion seems to count. They start become more committed. So this is a little bit of play on words. You know, instead of complying with the change, you want them committed. How do you get them committed? You have to involve them and about the change or what's going to happen. And then people want to do a good job. It's the way that the leader and the executive team structures it.
And that's really the goal, leadership. You want people committed,
right? Not
simply complying.
Yes.
Okay. And that's again, one of those artful tools of leadership.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm reminded when I hear you talk is the importance of process. Process, I learned over the course of time, was really, really important when we were doing change. And process was all those steps to bring the organization along, to help the organization understand the why behind we're going in this direction, not just it's coming down from on high and we're going off in this direction, but taking the time and building that into the process of the whole thing, you know, from moving from what you're doing today to what you're doing in the future. Just factor in as much process to help the organization get comfortable with it and accept it as you move through it.
That's great. So they can see the steps ahead of time. I'm working with a university that's a medical school, and they're trying to bring more of a coaching into this, the coaching methodology. And so some of it is, we talked about, there's a series of questions that need to be answered. And so simple questions, but they're almost the frequent FAQs, frequently asked questions. Where do I go to have this? Who is leading this? When do I come into this? Just some of the process things that you're saying. What is the training that we're going to have? How are we going to measure this? Is there recognition that we're 1/3 through? And so really having all these laid out is just really important. And so some of the language is they need to develop these questions that people can say hello to. If they don't have that as inspiring and, you know, where am I moving, they want to stay where they were.
There was a word that you said there, and that was the whole coaching piece.
Yeah.
And of course, we both come from athletic backgrounds, so that's probably, you know, a real comfortable analogy for us. But I always wanted to get those in the organization to be more about the coaching than the evaluation. And it's one of the reasons, and maybe we can talk about this sometime, is performance evaluations.
Oh, yeah.
I had a real challenge with performance evaluations because all we would do was really grading them on past behavior, when I really wanted them to be concentrating on, okay, you're here today. What does tomorrow look like?
Right.
And how can we partner to get you from here to here?
Beautiful.
Even if they're performing at a high level.
Yeah.
You know? So coaching, I like that word, coaching.
I'll just say a word about that. You're right. We could talk more about it. But I think in this performance reviews, which basically should be coaching, not just an evaluation, is what are you doing well? And have them ahead of time fill that
Absolutely.
out so I don't have to evaluate you. And then I could say, hey, I agree with you. Wow, you're doing that really well. But then if you also in your own evaluation said, here's some areas I can think I could do more of, the more they can put that on the table and I can say, yeah, I agree, you probably could do more. Let's talk about that. That's so much easier to hear about doing something more, improving versus you're not doing this, you got a bad evaluation, and then they're defensive.
You know, the other thing that I think is important along this line is giving them an opportunity to evaluate me.
Ooh.
And I always started the evaluation period off with, okay, really, I would like you to evaluate me. And I'd give them a heads up that it was coming so they could get their thoughts together. But I need, not that I want, it's not a part of an obligatory process that we're going through, but I need to hear your perspective of me. I need to understand where I can be better and where I can support you better. So let's start there.
So you start with that.
Every time.
I would say to anybody listening to this, what a best practice that is. And because we talked about vulnerability, we talked about showing your opinion counts. Even that statement all of a sudden opens it up. And we talked about kind of where the brain needs to be kind of open to possibilities. That does it versus, here's this review. They're already gun shy and they're feeling negative.
Yes.
That's great.
Well, thank you. If you'd like to learn more, contact us at KC at Kevin Crawford Consulting. This has been the Executive Mirror.